Media fact checker. Police operation and fatal confrontation with Desmond Freeman, accused child molester on the run for 200 days. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Desmond Freeman was on the run for over 200 days before being located near Walwa, a town with a population of 191, near the Murray River. Freeman shot and killed Senior Constable Vadim de Wart-Hotet, 35, and Detective Leading Senior Constable Neil Thompson, 59, at a rural property in Porpunka on August 26. Freeman made the prophetic statement to his wife Amolia, "I love you and will see you in heaven after the shootings." Police conducted a low-key operation initially, using general duties officers as first responders, despite discussions about calling in the Critical Incident Response Team. The Special Operations Group, SOG, also known as the Sons of God, trained for sieges using 6 container-type constructions resembling Freeman's hideout. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. 20-year-old WA man charged with terrorism offences and planning attacks on government mosque targets. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jason Joseph Michaels, 20, was charged with terrorism offences in February 2024 after a raid on his Bindoon home, 75 kilometres northeast of Perth. Police seized firearms, a large knife collection, and dozens of rounds of ammunition during the raid at Michaels's Bindoon residence. Michaels allegedly wrote in a diary about planning a day of justice and referenced the Bondi Beach attack, stating, "What I want to do to both of these groups pales in comparison to today." Michaels was held in Casuarina Prison's Special Handling Unit and appeared via video link for his bail hearing in Perth Magistrates Court. Magistrate Belinda Coleman refused bail, describing Michaels's diary as disturbing and not mere ramblings. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Michaels allegedly wanted to make a gun using a 3D printer, while Newscomau only states he researched firearm construction by 3D computer without confirming intent to build. Newscomau explicitly states Michaels had an open browser tab to watch people die during the raid, but ABC does not mention this detail. ABC describes Michaels's diary as disturbing, but Porter's defense framing it as escapism is consistent across sources. However, Newscomau emphasizes the grandiose ideas were never actionable, while ABC does not explicitly state this. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Ilia Malinin's redemption at the 2024 World Figure Skating Championships after Olympic collapse. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Ilia Malinin won the 2024 World Figure Skating Championship on Saturday in Prague's O2 Arena. Malinin scored a personal best 111.29 in the short program, leading by over 9 points after Thursday's session. In the free skate, Malinin scored 218.11 to finish with a total of 329.40 points. Yumi Kagiyama, Japan, finished second with 306.67 points, Shun Soto, Japan, third with 288.54. Malinin landed 5 quadruple jumps in his free skate, including a quad toe triple toe combination and a backflip. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Malinin's free skate score of 218.11 put him nearly 23 points ahead of Kagiyama's 306.67, while Article 2 does not mention this specific margin. Article 1 lists Malinin's short program score as 111.29 with a lead of over 9 points, but Article 2 does not specify the exact lead margin. Article 1 mentions Malinin's quad toe triple toe combination followed by a backflip late in the program, while Article 2 does not detail the backflip. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. AFL player Tristan Xerri banned for wiping blood on opponent's face during a match. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Tristan Xerri was banned for 3 AFL games for wiping blood from his nose onto Essendon captain Andrew McGrath's face during a match on the 29th of March, 2025, Saturday night. The incident occurred at Docklands Stadium during North Melbourne's 12-point win over Essendon. Xerri pleaded guilty to a serious misconduct charge at the AFL Tribunal on the 31st of March, 2025, Monday. Tribunal Chairman Jeff Gleeson KC described the act as disgraceful behaviour and noted Xerri's hand was close to McGrath's open mouth. Xerri admitted in evidence that there was blood on his hand, which was not clear in the video footage, and called it a brain fade. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Xerri was sledged with homophobic slurs, weak C-word, effing, flopping C-word, before the incident, while ABC does not mention this detail. The Guardian states Xerri's hand was close to McGrath's open mouth during the incident, but ABC and The Age do not specify this detail. The Guardian highlights Xerri's no attempt whatsoever to minimize the incident, while The Age focuses more on the broader context of the game's chaos leading to the incident. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's food and economic crisis from Middle East conflict and supply chain disruptions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Michael Hampson, Norco CEO, warned the Middle East conflict fallout would make COVID look like a tea party, stating we won't be worried about running out of toilet paper, we'll be worried about not having food, both sources. Fertilizer costs have doubled due to the conflict, both sources. Diesel shortages threaten key planting and harvesting windows for Australian farmers, both sources. Transport costs from packing sheds to supermarkets have doubled, both sources. Michael Crisera, Fruit Growers Victoria, stated our costs are going to go up with every box, we need to be able to pass that on, both sources. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states petrol prices are climbing towards $3.4 per litre, while Guardian does not mention this specific price range. News Kamau mentions the conflict is described as the escalating conflict in the Middle East, while Guardian specifies it as the US-Israel war on Iran. News Kamau reports Dr. Michael Wright urged calm and suggested local production of medicines, while Guardian does not mention this suggestion. This story was covered by The Guardian and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Global Conservative push to boost fertility rates amid declining birth trends. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Matt Canavan, newly elected Nationals leader, declared in 2024 a desire for a hyper-Australia with more Australian babies and traditional family values, including full maternity wards and carefree Sunday afternoons. Australia's fertility rate dropped to a record low of 1.48 babies per woman in 2024, below the replacement rate of 2.1. Peter Costello introduced Australia's baby bonus in 2004, offering a $3,000 payment per child, which increased births by 6.5% overall and 10% among mothers with no taxable income. The 2020 Demography Summit in Australia included Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who warned Europe risks an exchange of populations if not populated by Europeans. Hungary's fertility rate was 1.39 babies per female in 2024 despite offering free IVF and tax incentives for multiple children. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the Nationals report argues immigration is a demographic band-aid worsening fertility, but no direct contradiction is present in Article 2. Article 1 claims the UK's Nigel Farage proposed abolishing the two-child limit for lower-paid workers but keeping it for migrant families, while Article 2 does not address this policy detail. Article 1 reports Hungary's fertility rate at 1.39 in 2024 despite pronatalist policies, but Article 2 does not provide comparative data or analysis on this point. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Queensland rail strike disrupts commuter services amid industrial dispute and planned maintenance. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Queensland Rail confirmed no trains were running between Darra and Rosewood, Ipswich Rosewood line, on April 1, 2024, due to industrial action. Queensland Rail confirmed no trains were running between Central and Cleveland, Cleveland line, on April 1, 2024, due to industrial action. Rail, Tram and Bus Union, RTBU, members walked off the job on Wednesday, April 1, 2024, triggering disruptions on the Ipswich Rosewood and Cleveland lines. Queensland Rail deployed rail replacement buses across the affected corridors, Darra, Rosewood and Central Cleveland, on April 1, 2024. A major 23-day rail shutdown is scheduled from April 3 to April 26, 2024, for upgrades and maintenance on the Sunshine Coast, Caboolture, Redcliffe, Doomben, Shorncliffe, Airport, Gold Coast, and Beenleigh corridors. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau reports Queensland Rail said unions had been locked out after refusing partial duties, but ABC denies Queensland Rail told workers not to attend work. Newscomau states Queensland Rail received over 30 protected industrial action notices, while ABC does not mention this specific number. Newscomau claims the RTBU estimated about 200 train control staff would participate in the strike, but ABC does not provide this specific number. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian government investigates social media platforms for under 16 age ban compliance violations. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and YouTube are under investigation for potential non-compliance with Australia's under-16 social media ban, mentioned in Articles 1, 2, 4, 5. The eSafety Commissioner will release a compliance update on Tuesday detailing how platforms are enforcing the ban, Articles 2, 4, 5. The ban prohibits users under 16 from creating or holding accounts on 10 platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, Threads, Twitch, X, Reddit, and Kik, Articles 2, 3, 4. Over 4.7 million accounts were deactivated, removed, or restricted in the first days after the ban took effect on December 10, 2025, Articles 2, 3, 4. Meta, Facebook, Instagram, reported closing 550,000 accounts, while Snapchat and TikTok combined closed 665,000 accounts, Article 2. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 2 states Meta closed 550,000 accounts, while Article 3 does not provide a specific number for Meta but states 4.7 million accounts were closed in total without disaggregation. Article 3 reports 70% of under-16s retained accounts on Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok, while Article 2 states 31% of parents reported their children still had social media accounts overall, no platform-specific breakdown. Article 3 claims the eSafety report found 69.3% of TikTok users under 16 still had accounts, but Article 2 does not provide this specific percentage for TikTok alone. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's 2026 daylight saving time end and clock adjustments in April. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Daylight saving in Australia ends on Sunday, April 5, 2026, when clocks move back 1 hour at 3 a.m. local time to 2 a.m. States and territories observing daylight saving include New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, Tasmania, the Australian Capital Territory, and Norfolk Island. Queensland, Western Australia, the Northern Territory, Christmas Island, and the Cocos, Keeling, Islands do not observe daylight saving. Daylight saving begins again in participating states on Sunday, October 4, 2026. The change occurs on the first Sunday of April annually, coinciding with Easter in 2026. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between sources on core factual claims. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Drug-affected driver sentenced for hitting schoolboys, sues government over arrest. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Taylor Hazel, 32, pleaded guilty to 2 counts of culpable driving causing grievous bodily harm to 2 schoolboys, aged 14 and 15, outside St Edmunds College, Canberra, on March 28, 2023. Hazel was driving a stolen green Commodore, NSW registered, from a Sutton childcare centre and had an 8-year-old girl inside before letting her out. Hazel crashed the stolen car outside St Christopher's Cathedral in Manuka after hitting the boys, then was arrested by AFP officers. Bodycam footage shows Hazel handcuffed and later forcibly slammed to the ground by AFP Tactical Response Team officers, with one officer grabbing his neck. An AFP investigation found the officer's conduct breached professional standards, and prosecutors accepted the force used was unlawful. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the 2 sources. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. 3 men charged in Sydney gym daylight shooting incident December 2025. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 3 men aged 40, 32, and 38 were charged over a shooting outside a gym in Gregory Hills, Sydney, on December 5, 2025. A 48-year-old man was allegedly fired upon with 12 shots outside the gym at Steer Road, Gregory Hills, at 8:30 a.m. on December 5, 2025. The alleged target escaped uninjured and the shooters fled in a red Range Rover SUV with cloned number plates. Police found the SUV abandoned in bushland near Macquarie Grove Road, Cobbitty, along with clothing, masks, and 2 pistols. A 40-year-old man was arrested at a Parramatta property on Monday and charged with shoot at with intent to murder and knowingly directing a criminal group. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC names the alleged target as Stephen Hallaby with gang links, but Newscomau does not mention his name or criminal background. ABC states the 38-year-old was remanded in custody to face bail division court on Wednesday, while Newscomau does not specify the exact court date for the 38-year-old beyond Wednesday. ABC mentions the 40-year-old was charged with contribute criminal activity, but Newscomau does not include this specific charge. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Northern Territory records multiple deaths in custody within a week. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A 19-year-old man died from stab wounds in Katherine on Sunday evening after being found in a car by police, with first aid administered in a police vehicle before being taken to a temporary field hospital, Newscomau, ABC, Guardian. The Katherine stabbing victim's death is being investigated as a death in custody due to police involvement shortly before his death, Newscomau, ABC. A 26-year-old man died at Darwin Correctional Centre on Saturday morning after being found unresponsive in his cell. Medical assistance was provided but he was declared deceased, Guardian, ABC, Newscomau. A 25-year-old man died in police custody on Tuesday after experiencing laboured breathing in the back of a police vehicle in Darwin's northern suburbs, Guardian, ABC, Newscomau. The 25-year-old man was arrested following reports of an assault at Taiwi Gardens Retirement Village, Guardian, ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau states the 25-year-old man died after being moved into the back of a police vehicle in Darwin's northern suburbs, while ABC and Guardian specify he was arrested at Taiwi Gardens Retirement Village in Casuarina. ABC mentions the 25-year-old man's death occurred after an ambulance was delayed due to flooding, but Newscomau and Guardian do not mention this delay. News Kamau describes the 18-year-old victim as being found near the hospital in a car, while ABC states he was airlifted to hospital in Darwin in a serious but stable condition without specifying the location of discovery. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Daly Cherry-Evans returned to Manly-Warringah Sea Eagles as a Rooster player and its emotional impact on both club and fans. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Daly Cherry-Evans made his first appearance for the Roosters at Brookvale Oval after leaving Manly-Warringah Sea Eagles in the off-season for the 2026 NRL season. The match took place under heavy rain and storm conditions, with lightning and flash flooding causing power cuts at Brookvale Oval an hour before kickoff. Manly-Warringah Sea Eagles led 10-8 at half-time after scoring 2 long-range tries, one by Jake Trbojevic, 9tm, within 30 seconds of kickoff and one by Tulu Kula. Cherry-Evans was booed by Manly fans throughout the game, including during warm-ups, team introductions, and his on-field run-on. Manly-Warringah Sea Eagles started the 2026 season with a 0-3 record, all losses occurring at Brookvale Oval. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 mentions the Roosters had 49 tackles in Manly's half, while Article 2 does not mention tackle counts at all. Article 1 states the Roosters had 15 players to choose from, with Billy Smith off and Hugo Savola on, but Article 2 does not mention player substitutions or bench depth. Article 1 describes the Roosters' first tackle in Manly's half occurring 20 minutes and 15 seconds into the game, while Article 2 does not mention this specific detail. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Victorian Government expands device bans in all schools including smartwatches and headphones. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Victorian public and private, including Catholic, schools will ban internet-enabled smartwatches and wireless headphones from Term 1 2027 under new legislation introduced January 27, 2024. Mobile phones have been banned in Victorian public schools since 2020, with an independent review showing improved student focus, socialisation, and reduced device-related incidents. Education Minister Ben Carroll stated the phone ban led to more focused on class and being more social and fewer incidents involving devices. The new policy will apply to all 233 independent schools in Victoria, previously free to set their own device rules. Exceptions for health-related device use will be allowed under the new legislation. But not all outlets told the same story. Theej states the legislation will be unveiled on Wednesday, January 27, 2024, while ABC does not mention this specific date for introduction. News Kamau claims Premier Jacinta Allen announced the changes on Wednesday morning, but Theej and ABC do not reference her direct involvement in the announcement. Theej reports the policy will apply to all schools starting Term 1 2027, while ABC's headline implies the ban begins next year without specifying the exact term. This story was covered by ABC News, news.com.au, and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Teenage assault on paramedic after stolen car crash in Melbourne. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 4 teenage males were travelling in a stolen Mazda 3 that collided with a Volkswagen Jetta at Nicholson St and Victoria Parade, Carlton, just before 6 a.m. on March 27. 2 teenagers fled the scene immediately after the crash. A 19-year-old male and a 15-year-old male were injured in the crash, with the 19-year-old suffering serious injuries. A 66-year-old man and 76-year-old woman from Terang were passengers in the Volkswagen and were taken to hospital as a precaution. The Mazda 3 was stolen from Mulgrave on March 21. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states 2 teenagers are in custody, but News Kamau does not mention any teens in custody. ABC says the 15-year-old assaulted a paramedic inside an ambulance, while News Kamau says it happened en route to hospital. ABC refers to the Volkswagen as a generic Volkswagen, but Newskanal specifies it is a Volkswagen Jetta. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. IOC bans transgender women and DSD athletes from female Olympic events via SRY gene testing. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The IOC banned transgender women and DSD athletes from female events at the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics and Future Games, effective immediately. Kirsty Coventry, IOC president, stated the decision was based on science and would protect fairness and safety in women's sport, citing a 10 to 12% male performance advantage in running, swimming, and over 20% in throwing, jumping events. The IOC mandated a one-time SRY gene screening test, via saliva, cheek swab, or blood, to determine biological sex for female category athletes at the Olympics, Youth Olympics, and qualifiers. Laurel Hubbard, New Zealand weightlifter, was the first transgender woman to compete at the Olympics, Tokyo 2021, after transitioning. Imaine Khalif, Algerian boxer, won gold in women's boxing at Paris 2024, sparking debates about DSD athletes' eligibility. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian Article 1 claims the IOC's policy is based on science and medical experts, but Guardian Article 5 states the IOC has not publicly shared the scientific data behind its decision. ABC Article 3 and Guardian Article 5 both state the SRY test is unreliable or reductive, while Guardian Article 1 and ABC Article 4 claim the IOC asserts it is highly accurate and unintrusive. Guardian Article 2 reports the IOC was pushing at an open door as sports had privately urged such policies, but no source confirms this was a widespread or unanimous sentiment among federations. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian court hearing on extradition of Chilean torture suspect Adriana Rivas. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Adriana Rivas is a 72-year-old Australian resident accused of kidnapping and torture during Chile's Pinochet dictatorship in the 1970s. Chile formally requested her extradition in 2014, and she has been in detention in Australia since 2019 awaiting removal. A two-day federal court hearing before Justice Michael Lee began on Monday, as of Article 1's reporting, to consider her final extradition appeal. Prosecutors allege Rivas was involved in the kidnapping, interrogation, and disappearances of 7 victims at the Simon Bolivar Barracks, a Pinochet-era extermination center. Rivas fled Chile in 2011 while on bail and arrived in Australia in 2011, where she lived in Bondi. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1, ABC, reports previously unreported emails suggesting DFAT consular officials may have aided Rivas's escape, while DFAT denies any record of such assistance. Article 1, ABC, includes a 2014 SBS interview where Rivas defended torture as necessary, but SBS's 2024 headlines do not reference this contradiction or her past statements. This story was covered by ABC News and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Saudi Arabia's push for US to escalate military campaign against Iran amid regional war. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, urged Donald Trump not to cut short the US-Israeli war on Iran, calling it a historic opportunity to remake the Middle East, both articles, Guardian. A Saudi intelligence source confirmed MBS's role in urging the US to intensify attacks on Iran, both articles, Guardian. Trump publicly confirmed MBS's warrior status and alignment with US efforts, stating "Yeah, he's fighting with us," both articles, Guardian. Saudi Arabia has not yet engaged militarily in the nearly 4-week-old war, both articles, Guardian. Iran launched a drone attack on Saudi Arabia's Yanbu oil refinery on the Red Sea coast, both articles, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 does not mention Saudi Arabia's explicit pivot to Iran detent via China's 2023 brokered deal, while Article 2 details this as a key strategic failure. Article 1 omits the UAE ambassador's direct call for a conclusive military defeat of Iran, which Article 2 includes as a regional pressure point. Article 1 does not quote Saudi defense expert Hesham Al-Ghanim's assessment of Saudi cautious neutrality, while Article 2 includes this as a key Saudi stance. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian politician Andrew Hastie criticises US-Iran war strategy and economic fallout impacts on Australia. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Andrew Hastie, Liberal MP, criticised US President Donald Trump's huge miscalculation in the Iran war as of early March 2024. Iran has blockaded the Strait of Hormuz, impacting global fuel supply chains and Australian fuel exports. Andrew Hastie stated Australia is dependent on the export of fuel in and out of the Middle East due to its location. The Australian government announced it would underwrite additional fuel cargo deliveries to address supply shortages, March 2024. Andrew Hastie served as a Special Forces veteran and fought in the Middle East alongside US forces. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Hastie may be open to a gas export levy despite coalition opposition, while Newscomau does not mention this proposal. ABC states Employment Minister Amanda Rishworth explicitly said work-from-home measures are not being considered for fuel shortages, but Newscomau omits this detail. ABC notes Hastie described Trump's criticism of Australia's warship refusal as petulant, February 2024, while Newscomau does not reference this. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. North Korea's cyber espionage and fraud operation targeting Australian firms via fake IT jobs. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. North Korea's regime is using an army of thousands of undercover operatives posing as remote IT workers to infiltrate Western companies, with a focus on Australia. The UN estimates North Korea's annual revenue from this operation is approximately $800 million. ASIO, Australian Security Intelligence Organisation, has identified North Korean operatives targeting Australian firms to funnel salaries back to Pyongyang. Major Australian banks, including NAB, have been infiltrated by North Korean agents, who were later discovered and sacked. The Australian Federal Police's cyber threat teams are assessing intelligence that North Korean agents are already on shore, including a Melbourne University alumnus suspected of acting as a regime intermediary. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources as they are nearly identical in content and reporting. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. German TV star Collien Fernandes AI porn allegations against ex-husband Christian Ulmen spark national debate on digital violence laws. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Collien Fernandes accused Christian Ulmen of creating and distributing AI-generated deepfake pornographic images of her via fake social media accounts. Fernandes filed a legal complaint against Ulmen in Spain in 2025, citing stronger legal protections for digital violence there. The couple separated in 2025 after living together in Mallorca, Spain, before moving back to Germany. Fernandes told Der Spiegel she discovered hundreds of fake pornographic images of her circulating online, later attributing them to Ulmen. Germany's Justice Minister Stefanie Hubig announced plans to criminalize production distribution of non-consensual deepfake porn with up to 2 years in prison. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Fernandes accused Ulmen of creating deepfakes via fake accounts before her documentary aired, while Article 2 claims she only discovered the source after the documentary's release. Article 1 describes the legal issue as primarily about deepfakes, but Article 2 frames it as identity abuse, impersonation, rather than AI-generated content. Article 1 mentions Ulmen's lawyer accused Der Spiegel of spreading inadmissible coverage based on suspicions, while Article 2 omits this exact phrasing. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US directs embassies to counter foreign disinformation using X and military psychological ops. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The US State Department issued a cable signed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio on March 29 directing all American embassies and consulates worldwide to launch coordinated campaigns against foreign propaganda. The cable endorses Elon Musk's X, formerly Twitter, and its Community Notes feature as an innovative and crowdsourced tool to counter disinformation without compromising free speech or privacy. The directive instructs embassies to work alongside the U.S. military's Psychological Operations Unit, MISO, formerly PSYOP, to address disinformation. The cable highlights Iran, Russia, and China as state actors conducting sophisticated disinformation campaigns targeting U.S. allies in Europe, Asia, and Latin America. The U.S. is at war with Iran, which has operated one of the world's most sophisticated state disinformation apparatuses for decades. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two Guardian articles provided. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Climate change threatens Australia's superb fairy-wren with extinction within decades. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The superb fairy-wren is predicted to face extinction within 30 to 40 years due to climate change impacts, based on intermediate and very high emission scenarios. Researchers from Australian National University, ANU, and James Cook University conducted a study tracking superb fairy-wrens in Canberra's Australian National Botanic Gardens for nearly 30 years. The study found that low breeding success occurs during dry springs, while reduced adult survival is linked to unusually warm winters and hot summers. The superb fairy-wren was voted Australia's favourite bird in 2013 and 2021 Guardian BirdLife Australia polls. The research was published in the journal *Nature* and warns that common species, not just rare ones, are declining rapidly due to climate change. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian mentions the study found high risk of extinction within 50 years even with optimistic emission scenarios, while ABC frames this as a dire prediction without explicitly stating optimism scenarios avoid extinction. The Guardian highlights that the wren's decline is a canary in a coal mine for other species but does not mention the pied currawong predator decline hypothesis, which ABC explicitly raises as a potential rescue mechanism. ABC states the study's data was used to project national extinction risks by 2062, while The Guardian focuses on local extinction risks in Canberra's Botanic Gardens without extending the projection nationally. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Private health insurance premium hikes in Australia and their economic impact. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Private health insurance premiums in Australia will rise by an average of 4.41% on April 1, 2026, marking the largest increase in nearly a decade. For-profit insurers like AIA Health Insurance, 5.98%, NIB, 5.47%, Medibank, 5.1%, and Bupa, 4.8%, are leading the increases, while not-for-profit funds such as GMHBA are raising rates by 1.98%. HCF's Hospital Optimal Gold cover will increase by 25%, adding approximately $167 annually for singles and $330 for families. The federal government attributes the premium hikes to higher hospital wages, medical technology costs, Australia's aging population, and increased demand for mental health and chronic disease services post-pandemic. Medical and hospital service costs rose by 5% in the 2024-25 financial year, according to government figures. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the average premium hike is 4.41%, while Article 2 does not provide a differing figure but emphasizes the variation in increases for different tiers of cover. Article 1 mentions the 4.41% hike is above the 3.73% increase from the previous year, but Article 2 does not explicitly compare it to the prior year's increase. Article 1 highlights that insurers are offering new customer promotions like 12 weeks free coverage, gift cards, and frequent flyer points, but Article 2 does not detail these specific promotions. This story was covered by news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian aid worker Zomi Frankcom's death in Gaza IDF strike and ongoing investigation. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Zomi Frankcom, 43, and 6 World Central Kitchen colleagues were killed in an Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, strike on their humanitarian aid convoy in Gaza on April 1, 2024. An Australian review by Mark Binskin, former defense chief, found a significant breakdown in situational awareness and serious failures in IDF practices, concluding the attack was not intentional but resulted from procedural errors. Israel's military advocate general is conducting an investigation into the strike, which remains ongoing as of April 2026, with no final conclusions or public findings released yet. The IDF dismissed 2 officers and reprimanded 3 others over the strike, acknowledging a violation of rules of engagement. Zomi Frankcom's brother Mal Frankcom has repeatedly stated the family has received no personal apology or compensation from Israel, nor updates on the investigation beyond vague assurances. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reported Israel's ambassador Hillel Neumann claimed the majority of so-called journalists killed in Gaza were activists guised as journalists, while the CPJ and Reporters Without Borders provided evidence contradicting this, stating the vast majority were legitimate journalists. The ABC and News Commu both cited Mal Frankcom's frustration with the lack of updates, but only the ABC included his specific statement that other high-profile cases there, in Israel, have since been closed, but this one remains open, implying selective prioritization. News Commu stated the Australian review found serious failures in Israeli military practices, while The Guardian quoted Neumann insisting the Binskin report concluded the attack was not intentional, though both sources agree the error was procedural. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Angus Taylor's car theft and related political events during fuel crisis. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Angus Taylor's car was stolen on March 27 from an address in Canberra's inner south. The stolen vehicle was located later that day in Turner, a North Canberra suburb. ACT policing confirmed the theft and took the car for forensic examination. The incident occurred just before a coalition press conference at a petrol station calling for a halving of the fuel excise. The press conference involved Angus Taylor, Matt Canavan, and Bridget McKenzie. But not all outlets told the same story. SMH states Taylor's car was likely not driven far due to lack of fuel, but Newscomau does not mention this detail. SMH implies the car theft was the reason Taylor appeared shirtless, while Newscomau does not comment on his attire. SMH reports Taylor's office declined to comment, but Newscomau only states Taylor's office was contacted for comment. This story was covered by news.com.au and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US-Iran ceasefire negotiations and escalating Middle East conflict over Strait of Hormuz and proxy wars. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump claims Iran is desperate for a ceasefire deal after 4 weeks of fighting, ABC 1, ABC 2, ABC 3. Iran denies direct negotiations with the US, stating message exchanges through mediators like Pakistan do not constitute talks, ABC 1, ABC 2, ABC 3. A 15-point US ceasefire plan was delivered to Iran via Pakistani intermediaries, ABC 1, ABC 2, ABC 3. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi confirmed Iran received the US proposal but called it one-sided and unfair, ABC 1, ABC 2. Pakistan is facilitating talks between the US and Iran, with reports of potential meetings in Islamabad, ABC 1, ABC 2, ABC 3. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC 1 states Trump claims Iran is begging for a deal, while Iran denies this and calls the US plan one-sided and unfair, ABC 1 vs Iran statements. ABC 2 reports Trump's ultimatum deadline was extended by 5 days, but ABC 3 does not specify the original deadline date beyond it being just as the deadline was to run out. ABC 1 and ABC 2 both report Iran denies direct negotiations, but ABC 3 states Trump claims talks with Iran are yielding great progress without clear evidence. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Donald Trump criticizes Australia and NATO allies over Iran war support. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump stated Australia was not great, and I was a little surprised by Australia during a White House press conference on April 11, 2024, regarding Australia's lack of support in the US-Israel war on Iran, Newscamau, Guardian, ABC. Trump described the Middle East conflict as Little League and questioned whether Australia and Europe would support the US in a larger conflict, Newscamau, Guardian. Australia has sent a surveillance aircraft and missiles to the United Arab Emirates to help defend it from Iranian attacks, Newscamau, ABC. Trump criticised UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer for saying the UK would send aircraft carriers when the war is over, calling it shocking and not great, Guardian, ABC. Trump claimed Iran was begging to make a deal and offered a 15-point ceasefire proposal, which an Iranian official described as one-sided and unfair, ABC, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscamau and ABC report Trump said Australia was not great, but Guardian does not include this exact phrasing, only Australia was not great without the not qualifier. ABC states Trump claimed Iran was begging to make a deal, while Newscamau and Guardian do not report this specific claim. Newscamau and ABC report Trump criticized Australia for not sending vessels to the Strait of Hormuz, but Guardian does not mention this specific criticism. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's National Film and Sound Archives 2026 Sounds of Australia Collection Editions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jack Colson's 1991 arrest speech. Gentlemen, this is democracy manifest. What is the charge? Eating a meal? A succulent Chinese meal was added to the NFSA's Sounds of Australia collection in 2026. The NFSA's Sounds of Australia collection includes 9 audio recordings added in 2026, including Jack Colson's speech, Missy Higgins' 2004 hit Scar, and the 2001 Reading Writing Hotline jingle. The collection requires nominated recordings to be over a decade old and is voted on by a panel of NFSA sound experts. The NFSA's Sounds of Australia collection was established almost 2 decades ago, around 2007. The collection now houses over 300,000 audio items, with 1/3 classified as at-risk and preserved through digitization. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian mentions Colson's arrest video was uploaded to YouTube in 2009, while ABC does not specify the upload year but focuses on the 1991 arrest footage's global spread. The Guardian states Colson worked under various aliases as a small-time criminal, while ABC does not mention his criminal aliases or background beyond his arrest. The Guardian notes the NFSA's Sounds of Australia collection includes 9 pieces of audio added in 2026 but does not list them all explicitly, while ABC provides a more detailed breakdown of the 9 additions. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Arrest and charges in Sydney grandfather's mistaken identity kidnapping and murder case. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Declan James Donnelly, 23, was arrested on Wednesday morning at his Seven Hills public housing address and charged with the kidnapping and murder of Chris Bagsarian, a 85-year-old Sydney grandfather mistakenly abducted on February 13. Donnelly was captured on CCTV at Bagsarian's North Ryde home at the time of the kidnapping and later near an abandoned Dural home where Bagsarian was allegedly tortured and killed. Donnelly faces charges including murder, kidnapping, possessing an unauthorized firearm and ammunition, and drug supply offences, heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, cannabis. Gerard Andrews, 29, and Daniel Stevens, 24, were previously charged with Bagsarian's kidnapping and murder and remain in custody. Bagsarian's body was found on February 24 near a golf club in Pitt Town, Sydney's northwest, 11 days after his abduction. But not all outlets told the same story. SMH states Donnelly was arrested wearing only his underwear, but Newscomau does not mention this detail. SMH reports Donnelly allegedly recruited Stevens and Andrews to help with the kidnapping and disposal of Bagsarian's body, while Newscomau does not specify this recruitment detail. Newscomau states Donnelly was charged with acquire firearm without authority, but SMH only mentions possess unauthorized firearm without the required charge. This story was covered by ABC News, news.com.au, and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian government underwrites fuel imports amid Middle East tensions and shortages. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese announced new fuel security powers on Saturday, the 24th of February, 2024, to address soaring diesel and petrol prices and shortages in Australia. The government will use public funds via Export Finance Australia to underwrite the purchase of additional shiploads of fuel, fertiliser, and other essentials to boost supply. Shortages have been reported at hundreds of service stations, particularly in New South Wales and Queensland, with panic buying cited as a contributing factor. The government will introduce amendments to Australia's Export Finance and Insurance Corporation Act on Monday, the 26th of February, 2024, to grant new fuel security powers. Independent distributors and regional fuel suppliers have reported struggling to secure enough supply from major importers, leaving some stations dry. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian does not mention the opposition's call for a fuel excise cut, while ABC reports opposition leader Angus Taylor repeatedly called for halving the fuel excise. The Guardian emphasises the government's focus on additional supplies available on the international market without mentioning budget implications, while ABC highlights Tony Wood's comment about implications for the upcoming budget. The Guardian does not reference the 53% figure for the fuel excise tax, while ABC explicitly states the excise is a 53% flat tax per litre. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Disappearance of 4-year-old Gus Lamont from South Australian Outback Station. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Gus Lamont, a 4-year-old with golden curls, was last seen on September 27, 2025, at Oak Park Station near Yunta, South Australia. Gus was reported missing at approximately 8:30 p.m. after his grandmother searched for him for 3 hours. The property is 40 to 45 kilometres south of Yunta and 45 kilometres inland from the nearest main roadway. Police declared Gus's disappearance a major crime in February 2026, ruling out theories he wandered off or was abducted. Task Force Horizon, a 12-member specialist team, was formed in October 2025 to investigate the case. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports police ruled out abduction due to the property's 45 kilometres inland from the nearest main roadway, exact distance, while Newscomau states it is 40 to 45 kilometres south of Yunta, vague range. Newscomau claims Josie Murray was arrested in February 2026 for a firearms offence unrelated to Gus's disappearance, but ABC does not mention this arrest. ABC states a suspect residing at the station has withdrawn support and is no longer cooperating, while Newscomau says other members of the family, plural, are no longer cooperating. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Man accused of alleged terrorist bomb attack at WA Invasion Day rally pleads mental health defence. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Liam Alexander Hall, 32, is accused of allegedly throwing a homemade explosive device into a crowd at an Invasion Day rally in Perth CBD on January 26, 2026. The device contained a glass container filled with liquid, screws, ball bearings, and nails, described as a fragment bomb. Hall is charged with engaging in a terrorist act, intent to harm, and possessing explosives under suspicious circumstances. Hall is being held at Perth's Franklin Centre for a psychiatric assessment ahead of a potential Section 27, insanity, defence. Simon Freitag is Hall's lawyer and has requested an 8-week adjournment to prepare a psychiatric report. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau and ABC cite different WA police commissioners for the nationalist racially motivated allegation, Christy Barrett versus Cole Blanche. Guardian states Hall's next hearing is in May, unspecified date, while Newscomau and ABC specify May 26 or 27. ABC describes the rally location as Forest Place, while Newscomau and Guardian refer to Perth CBD without specifying Forest Place. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US President Trump criticizes Australia's role in Iran conflict amid US military action and diplomatic tensions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump publicly criticized Australia in a White House cabinet meeting, calling it not great for not assisting sufficiently in the war against Iran, stating, "I was a little surprised by Australia, SMH, Thij." Prime Minister Anthony Albanese responded that Australia was not consulted before the US military action in Iran and denied Trump's claims, stating there is no request being made to Australia that has not been agreed to, SMH, Thij, ABC. Australia provided advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles to the United Arab Emirates at its request, which Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles confirmed as the only US request Australia has fulfilled, SMH, Thij. Trump extended Iran's deadline to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to April 6, pausing energy infrastructure strikes until then, while claiming US has already won the war, Thij, ABC. Iran's initial response to the US peace proposal was described as one-sided and unfair by a senior Iranian official, ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. SMH and Thij report Trump's criticism of Australia for not assisting in the Iran war, but ABC's Albanese quote suggests Australia is not precious about not being consulted, implying a more neutral stance than the other sources' framing of Trump's criticism. SMH and Thij state Trump extended Iran's deadline to April 6, but ABC reports Iran has not asked for a 10-day pause on energy infrastructure strikes, contradicting Trump's claim that Iran requested it. SMH and Thij mention Trump's mixed messaging about Iran's negotiators, but ABC does not include this detail, focusing instead on Trump's unilateral declaration of victory. This story was covered by ABC News, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's fuel crisis and government response to Middle East war-driven oil price spikes. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese delivered a rare national address to the nation on Wednesday, April 3, via live TV radio broadcast, urging Australians to conserve fuel and reassuring them to carry on as normal despite the global oil crisis. ABC 1, Guardian 2, Thij 30, ABC 15, Guardian 25, ABC 29. The federal government halved the fuel excise from 52.6 cents to 26.3 cents per litre for 3 months, April 1 to June 30, saving motorists approximately 26.3 cents per litre. ABC 1, Guardian 4, ABC 12, ABC 10, Guardian 17, ABC 11, ABC 24, Guardian 26, Thij 30. The heavy vehicle road user charge was reduced to 0 for 3 months to support truck drivers. ABC 1, Guardian 4, ABC 12, ABC 10, ABC 14, ABC 24, Guardian 26, Thege 30. Australia currently holds about 39 days worth of petrol, 30 days worth of diesel, and 30 days worth of jet fuel in reserve. ABC 1, ABC 10, ABC 29. The National Cabinet agreed to a 4-stage fuel security plan, with Australia currently at Stage 2, Keep Australia Moving, ABC 1, Guardian 4, ABC 12, ABC 29, Guardian 26, Thege 30. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian, Guardian 2, and ABC 10, both report that the excise cut was expected to take days or weeks to flow through, but ABC 11, and News.com.au, News 17, report that prices began falling immediately in some areas, with Adelaide seeing a 25-cent drop on the first day. The Guardian, Guardian 2, states that the ACCC found the excise cut was passed on to retail prices at the vast majority of service stations after 6 weeks in 2022, while ABC 10, reports that the ACCC found the savings were largely passed on after 6 weeks, with some variation. The Guardian, Guardian 6, and ABC 24, both warn that the excise cut could increase demand and pressure inflation, but ABC 12, reports that Angus Taylor, opposition leader, claimed the excise cut would have an extremely small impact on demand, 2% increase. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, News.com.au, SBS News, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. F1 safety crisis after Oliver Bearman's high-speed crash at Japanese GP. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Oliver Bearman crashed at the Japanese Grand Prix, Suzuka Circuit, after evading Franco Colapinto's Alpine due to a closing speed of 50 km per hour, 31 miles per hour, at 190 to 191 miles per hour, 307 km/h. Bearman's impact with the barrier was measured at 50 G, and he escaped with only bruising, while his Haas car was heavily damaged. The crash occurred when Bearman was using boost mode, extra electrical power, while Colapinto was recovering energy, creating a significant speed differential. Haas team principal Ayao Komatsu called the crash a lucky escape and stated, "Yes. It could have been a lot worse." Williams driver Carlos Sainz warned before the season that such closing speeds and accidents were inevitable under the new regulations and demanded immediate action. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian Article 1 states Bearman was travelling at 190 miles per hour when he crashed, while Guardian Article 2 reports 307 km/h, 191 miles per hour. Guardian Article 1 spells Haas team principal's name as Ayao Komatsu, while ABC spells it as Ayo Komatsu. Guardian Article 2 mentions that Bearman's car was in pieces after the crash, but ABC does not provide this detail. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Scientists create first 3D map of clitoral nerves after decades of neglect. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A 3D map of the clitoral nerves was created using high-energy X-rays on donated female pelvises by Ju-Young Lee at Amsterdam University Medical Center. The clitoris was first anatomically dissected in 1546 by Charles Estienne, who called it the member honto, shameful member. Andreas Vesalius in the 16th century dismissed the clitoris as a new and useless part and claimed it did not exist in healthy women. The clitoris was not included in standard anatomy textbooks until the 38th edition of Gray's Anatomy, 1995. A 2018 study found that physical examination of the clitoris is uncommon and not routinely taught in gynecology training programs. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 mentions the clitoris was first anatomically dissected in 1546 by Charles Estienne, but does not specify the exact anatomical details or context beyond his description as member honto. Article 2 states the clitoris was not included in standard anatomy textbooks until the 38th edition of Gray's Anatomy, 1995, while Article 1 does not mention this specific textbook or edition. Article 1 references the Malleus Maleficarum, 1486, as describing the clitoris as the devil's teat, but Article 2 does not mention this historical text or its implications. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Jannik Sinner completes Sunshine Double at Miami Open 2024 after defeating Jiri Lehecka. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jannik Sinner defeated Jiri Lehecka 6-4, 6-4 to win the Miami Open title on March 2024. Sinner's victory marks the 8th male player to win both Indian Wells and Miami Sunshine Double. Sinner has won 34 consecutive sets at Masters 1000 level, dating back to his Paris title in November 2023. Sinner defeated Alexander Zverev 6-3, 7-6, 4, in the Miami Open semifinals. Aryna Sabalenka also completed the Sunshine Double by winning Indian Wells and Miami in the same year. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Sinner's 34 consecutive Masters sets include 3 consecutive Masters titles without dropping a set, while Article 2 does not specify this detail. Article 1 mentions Sinner's 2023 doping suspension left him 1,500 points behind Alcaraz, but Article 2 does not quantify the gap. Article 2 describes Sabalenka's mental approach as involving self-reminders: no, 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 no. You're strong enough, while Article 1 does not quote this exact phrase. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. TT Line introduces 15% fuel surcharge on Spirit of Tasmania ferry tickets due to rising fuel costs. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. TT Line announced a 15% fuel surcharge on new Spirit of Tasmania ferry tickets effective immediately, tomorrow. Fuel prices for TT Line increased by 80%, leading to projected $50 million in losses. The surcharge will not apply to existing bookings and is described as temporary by TT Line. TT Line chairman Ken Konofsky stated the surcharge is not intended to generate profit but to recover costs. Freight customers already pay a fuel levy under existing contracts. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau states the surcharge could remain even after fuel prices drop to distribute costs, while ABC emphasizes it will be removed at the earliest opportunity. Newscomau mentions the surcharge may stay to reduce the impost on individual passengers, but ABC does not explicitly state this reasoning. Newscomau provides specific surcharge amounts for different passenger types: $228, $107, $147, while ABC only mentions approximate figures, $107 and $228, without the $147 detail. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's record-breaking ODI win over West Indies in Women's Cricket Series. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia won the first women's ODI against the West Indies by 103 runs in St Kitts, AEDT, on Saturday. Australia scored 341 runs from 49.5 overs, setting a record women's ODI team total in the Caribbean. Phoebe Litchfield top-scored for Australia with 77 runs, and 5 other teammates reached the 40s. Stephanie Taylor scored her first ODI century since 2021 with 105 not out from 129 balls, featuring 10 fours and a 6. Georgia Wareham was named player of the match for her 42 runs from 21 balls, 5 fours, 2 sixes, and 1 wicket, 39 runs. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states the second ODI is on Sunday, while ABC states it is on Monday morning. No contradictions in factual claims beyond scheduling differences. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian government urges Fair Work Commission for minimum wage increase above inflation. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Albanese government submitted to the Fair Work Commission's annual wage review asking for an economically sustainable real wage increase for 2.7 million minimum wage and award-reliant workers in Australia. About 2.7 million Australians, roughly a quarter of the nation's workforce, are on the national minimum wage or award-reliant jobs. The current minimum wage is $175.40 per week, higher than when the Albanese government took office in 2022. The Fair Work Commission will decide on any minimum wage increase in coming months, with the new rate set to take effect from July 1st. The Reserve Bank of Australia raised the official cash rate to 4.1% on March 17, 2026, marking the second consecutive hike this year. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau states the government's submission suggests an increase consistent with inflation returning to the RBA's 2 to 3% target band in 2026 to 27, while ABC emphasises the government's focus on a real increase above current inflation, 3.7%, without specifying a timeline. Newscomau does not mention the government's explicit call for an above-inflation increase, whereas ABC headlines and text explicitly state the government is urging a real, above-inflation, pay rise. ABC reports that minimum and award wage earners account for 13% of the wage bill, while Newscomau does not provide this specific statistic. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Nicolás Maduro's federal court appearance in New York for narco-terrorism charges and legal funding disputes. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Nicolás Maduro and his wife Cilia Flores appeared in a Manhattan federal court on the 15th of February, 2024 for a hearing in their narco-terrorism case. Maduro and Flores were captured by U.S. Special Forces in a pre-dawn raid in Caracas, Venezuela on the 3rd of January, 2024. Both Maduro and Flores pleaded not guilty during their arraignment on the 5th of January, 2024. Maduro and Flores are accused of narco-terrorism and narcotics-related charges, including ordering kidnappings, beatings, and murders tied to drug trafficking. The U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, initially granted a waiver on the 9th of January, 2024 for Venezuela to fund Maduro's defense, then reversed it within hours. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Maduro's lawyer Barry Pollock argued that U.S. taxpayers would fund his defense if Venezuela's funds were blocked, while The Guardian does not mention Pollock's specific argument about resource diversion. The Guardian states the U.S. raid in Caracas reportedly killed 100 people, but ABC does not mention this specific death toll and focuses on Maduro's protestations of innocence during the raid. ABC highlights Trump's direct statement about bringing additional charges against Maduro, while The Guardian does not reference Trump's comments in its articles. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Tropical Cyclone Narelle's rare landfall and iron-rich dust storm causing blood-red skies in Western Australia. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Tropical Cyclone Narelle made landfall in Western Australia on the 27th of March, 2013, becoming the first storm in over 20 years to hit 3 of Australia's state's territories. The sky turned blood-red in Shark Bay, Western Australia, ahead of Cyclone Narelle's arrival due to iron-rich dust stirred by strong winds from the Pilbara region. Cyclone Narelle made landfall near Exmouth, approximately 900 kilometres north of Perth, in the Gascoyne region. The red sky was caused by iron-rich, rust-coloured soil, common in the Pilbara, being whipped up by Cyclone Narelle's winds. The phenomenon lasted several hours, beginning around midday, and cleared quickly as the cyclone's winds intensified. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian Article 1 states Cyclone Narelle made landfall on Friday afternoon, while Guardian Article 3 does not specify the exact time of landfall. ABC mentions the red sky began at 3:30 p.m., but Guardian sources do not provide this specific timestamp. Guardian Article 1 implies the storm affected multiple states' territories but does not name them, while Guardian Article 3 does not mention this claim. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Fair Work Commission abolishes junior pay rates for 18 to 20-year-olds in Australia. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Fair Work Commission abolished junior pay rates for workers aged 18 to 20 in retail, fast food, and pharmacy sectors. Around 500,000 young Australians, aged 18 to 20, will receive wage increases under the new ruling. The changes apply to the General Retail Industry Award, Fast Food Industry Award, and Pharmacy Industry Award. Workers aged 18 were previously paid 70% of the adult rate, 19-year-olds 80%, and 20-year-olds 90% of the award rate. The wage increases will be phased in over 4 years, with the first adjustment starting in December 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. SBS does not mention the pharmacy sector as affected, while Guardian and ABC both include it. Guardian and ABC both state the ruling is comparable to equal pay for women in the 1970s, but SBS does not reference this comparison. ABC and Guardian mention a 6-month employment requirement for workers to receive the adult rate, but SBS does not mention this detail. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Legal dispute between Kyle Sandilands, Jackie Henderson, and ARN Media over contract terminations. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Kyle Sandilands and Jackie Henderson were co-hosts of the Kyle and Jackie O Show on Keys 1065 Sydney, ARN Media station, for over 25 years. ARN Media terminated both Sandilands and Henderson's contracts in March 2024 after an on-air argument on February 20, 2024, involving bullying and psychosocial health complaints from Henderson. Sandilands' $100 million contract, 10-year deal, included a base salary of $7.4 million annually, a $200,000 consultancy fee, a $120,000 flight allowance, and $500,000 in contra airtime value, reported in multiple sources. Sandilands filed a wrongful termination claim in the Federal Court of Australia on March 20, 2024, seeking reinstatement and unpaid wages, $85 million remaining. Henderson filed a separate $82.25 million wrongful termination claim against ARN Media on March 23, 2024, alleging adverse action under the Fair Work Act. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC both report ARN Media terminated Henderson's contract due to her complaint letter about Sandilands' conduct, but The Guardian emphasises the Fair Work Act violation while ABC focuses on the unsafe work environment claim. Sandilands' lawyers argue the termination was invalid because Henderson's contract was already terminated, leaving no opportunity to remedy the situation, reported in ABC The Age, but ARN disputes this, claiming Sandilands had a 14-day deadline to fix the issue. The Guardian states ARN disputes Henderson's claims and will defend proceedings, while ABC reports ARN's lawyer Tom Blackburn SC explicitly called Sandilands' claim for reinstatement effectively nil in prospects. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian political polling shows Labor's declining support amid fuel crisis and Middle East war. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese's Labour government primary vote dropped to 31% in 2 recent polls, Newspoll and Redbridge, down from 36% in November 2023 and 34.6% at the May 2024 federal election. One Nation's primary vote was 26% in Newspoll and 29% in Redbridge, both higher than the coalition's 21%, Newspoll, and 17%, Redbridge. 72% of voters disapproved of US military action against Iran in both Newspoll and Redbridge polls. Anthony Albanese's net approval rating dropped to -17, Newspoll, and 57% dissatisfied with his performance, Newspoll, versus 39% satisfied. Australia announced it would underwrite the purchase of additional fuel cargoes to address supply shortages, with Prime Minister Albanese confirming the move on Sunday. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 reports One Nation's primary vote dropped to 26% in Newspoll, while Article 2 states One Nation's support slipped slightly without specifying the exact drop. Article 1 claims the coalition's primary vote was 21% in Newspoll, but Article 2 does not mention this specific number. Article 1 notes the coalition's primary vote was a record low of 17% in Redbridge, while Article 2 does not reference Redbridge's coalition support. This story was covered by news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Arson attack on Jewish charity ambulances in London and police investigations. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 4 ambulances operated by Hatzolah Northwest, a Jewish charity in North London, were set on fire near the Matchsyke Hadath Synagogue on Highfield Road, Golders Green, around 1:45 a.m. on March 23, the 23rd of March. The incident is being treated as an anti-Semitic hate crime by the Metropolitan Police. Commander Helen Flanagan is leading the counter-terrorism investigation into the attack. CCTV footage suggests at least 3 people were involved in the arson attack. The investigation is being led by counter-terrorism detectives despite not being declared a terrorism case. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states 2 men were arrested and released on bail, while Article 2 reports 3 individuals, 2 men and a boy, were arrested and remain in custody. Article 1 mentions searches in Kilburn, King's Cross, and 2 other addresses in northwest London, while Article 2 specifies searches were conducted at separate homes in East London only. Article 1 does not mention the ages of the 2 men arrested initially, only states 47 and 45, while Article 2 provides specific ages, 19, 20, and 17, for the 3 individuals arrested later. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis.